And let's stay with this and speak to Associate Editor at Daily Maverick and retired U.S. diplomat Brooks Spector. Brooks, thank you so much for your time this evening. We're seeing Donald Trump addressing this rally in North Carolina. Let's start with the significance of this particular state.
Well, good evening. Good to be with you. North Carolina is one of 7 states that are usually referred to as swing states. And what that means in simple terms is that about half the people are supportive of the Democratic Party's candidate, and presumably about half the people are supporting the Republican Party's candidate. One of the things we have learned in watching all of the polls that have been carried out over the last number of months, that the polls do not necessarily tell all of the story. And that's partly because the most important thing now is not who's ahead, quote unquote, in a poll, but the turnout for actual voting. And it's important to know that now turnout actually includes all the people who voted by advance voting or mail-in ballots, which are many, many millions of people. Some of the numbers are pushing 80 million of the potential voters, which means that for all those people who have voted already, no matter what's being said now, it no longer matters because they've already cast their ballot. So this exercise is traditional in a sense that the candidates rush around at the last day to try to squeeze in one last event and get just a handful more people to vote. But the way the system is set up in the U.S., as you know, you don't win a popular vote nationally, you win state by state by state. So if you win North Carolina by 5,000 votes, for example, you get all of its electoral weight, which is essentially a measure of its population. There are 538 electoral votes to be counted. Divide that by 2, and you get the figure that you win with 270. Now, some of the electoral votes are already baked in for candidates. California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois. Those are considered particularly Democratic states. Texas and Florida, presumably, particularly Republican states, as is some of the Midwest and the South. What that means is there's about 100 electoral votes in those 7 swing states that matter. But the one that matters most, and the one that I will be spending a lot of time watching between now and the end of counting, is Pennsylvania. It's a big state in terms of population, so it has a large number of electoral votes, but also because it has several crucial variables. 2 big cities, which will go Democratic, the suburban rings around those cities in suburban counties, which will be a real bellwether as to what's happening. And it has a large rural and small town area, not so much people in those areas, but those are probably consistently Republican. So the candidates are busy trying to squeeze every last vote out of those suburban counties, which are presumed to be up for grabs. Some wag has said, well, actually, the whole election depends on a couple thousand people in some suburban towns outside of Philadelphia. That's not entirely true, but there's an element of truth in that.
And when you talk about Pennsylvania and how critical it is right now, we've seen these candidates, of course, go to swing state after swing state. But how would you say, watching them campaign, they've actually performed in Pennsylvania specifically?
They've been there like a wet blanket all over everything. And all of their surrogates, other people who campaign on their behalf, they're also going there. And then the local candidates because there are other elections as well for various offices, they're campaigning actively as well. And so the whole thing is like a giant machine of candidates and their surrogates trying desperately to get just a few more people in those suburbs to say, yes, I'm in favor of your candidate, and yes, I will go to vote. And the key here is getting the people up off their sofas and couches and actually going to vote if they haven't already voted by advance or mail ballots. And that, of course, is why you see candidates in those states.
And of course, the viewers always ask, about this Electoral College system and how does it begin to decide an election? What is its composition? Let's try and simplify it. For someone who's watching us tonight who says, you talk about the Electoral College, what is the system and how then, is it composed of and how does it decide an election?
Okay, it's really let's boil it down to its essentials, as you've said. It's based effectively on population. So a big state like California has, I think, 59 electoral votes. A small state like Delaware has 3. Small, not in area terms, but in population terms. So big states: California, New York, Illinois, Texas, Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. They have lots of electoral votes. Small states like Delaware, Wyoming, Alaska, Idaho, Montana, lots of area, lots of sheep, lots of cows, not so many people. So each of those states, actually, the people go and they vote. They're voting for a candidate, but in reality, they are saying we want our state's Electoral College votes to go to that candidate. And it's more of an abstraction. It's not like they get together like the College of Cardinals electing a new pope. They don't really have a choice in the matter because all those people are is simply stand-ins for the vote that was taken state by state by state. Long time ago, maybe they had an independent voice, but now basically it's just a mathematical expression. There are 538 of those electoral votes because there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, 100 senators, and three electoral votes for the District of Columbia, that's Washington, D.C. So 538. Divide that by 2, and if you get 270 of the electoral votes, you are the president. You get to win. If you get 268, you get to attend the inauguration, but you're not the winner.
When it comes to the states and the counting, there are some who are suggesting that Georgia, Michigan may be the fastest to count. You have North Carolina, which may traditionally be a quick count, but there may be some disruptions potentially due to Hurricane Helene. How much of a concern is that as well for those who will be voting in North Carolina? Because we saw how devastating, that hurricane was for them. One of the important things to keep in mind is that unlike South Africa, there's no independent electoral commission in the United States that manages the entirety of the election. Mm-hmm. The election is run literally state by state by state. As I understand North Carolina, there's been an enormous amount of energy, even though the devastation there from the hurricane was very real. But a lot of energy dedicated to making sure that citizens in isolated parts of the state get their advance ballot paper so that they too can vote, even if their house is a mess or they're living in a temporary quarter somewhere or they're still trying to dig out from the wreckage. There will be complaints. Inevitably, there are going to be. But there is no credible evidence that there is any kind of ballot stuffing or secret process to eliminate ballots or any of that kind of thing. There'll be lots of charges. But if you remember the last election in 2020, the Republicans went to the courts 61 times. And 60 of those cases were thrown out immediately on the grounds that there was no evidence of cheating. One of them was tossed out on a technical ground, that is, the complainant had no standing in the case. They were not directly involved in the issue that was being asked to be judged. I think you're going to find that the states severally across the country are much better prepared to deal with this kind of charge than they were just 4 years ago. I saw a documentary on Georgia, which is another one of those swing states, and the amount of energy that is going into making sure that the counts are accurate and honest and complete and obviously accessible to observers from both parties is really considerable. People can charge whatever they want, but they have to have evidence to back it up. I think you're going to find that in a place like North Carolina, which has had all that damage, there are going to be all manner of volunteers making sure that people who want to go vote can get to a polling station if they haven't already voted. We shall see, of course.
unlike many of my friends, I will end up being up all night on Tuesday night through Wednesday morning watching as those results begin to trickle in.
And the immigration issue has been a huge one, but I wonder, in your view, because some of the reporters are talking about this as well, how big of a focus is there going to be on the Hispanic vote as well in this election?
Well, let's take the question of immigration in the first place. The Republicans have spent an enormous amount of time making immigration an issue which is supposed to decide the election, that theoretically the Biden administration and then Kamala Harris, because she was part of it, paid no attention to immigration, and therefore everybody is a threat. There are, all the rapists and the muggers and the thieves and the mentally ill from all over the world are streaming in to do damage or to eat the puppies and kittens of American citizens. That was one charge. You heard that before. Hispanic Americans aren't a unified force, however. If you are a Hispanic American living in a state like California or New Mexico or Arizona or the southern part of Texas, your historical relationship sometimes goes back before there was the United States, because those areas were part of a Spanish colony and then part of Mexico for hundreds of years collectively. Those people have traditionally been Democratic Party voters, although there is some indication that some of them have been defecting to the Republican Party on social issues, things like concern for the family, concerns over fairly conservative social values in a community. But then if you look at the people in South Florida, many of whom are people who fled Cuba in the 1960s or are the children of those people, their position has been significantly leaning toward Republicans historically. But then you go to big states in the Northeast and the Midwest, where there are lots of people who are Puerto Rican. Now, Puerto Rico is an interesting case, because if you live in Puerto Rico on the island, you can't vote. But because if you move to the U.S., you are automatically a citizen, you are allowed to vote. That's part of the arrangement of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Now, some people don't move because you're free from paying federal taxes. You move to the United States continentally, you get the right to vote, but you also get to pay the taxes. Those people have historically been Democratic Party supporters, but they have been relatively registered in relatively low numbers and have voted in relatively low numbers as well. I think that the way the discussion has gone and the charges that Donald Trump and his people have made about Puerto Ricans, most especially that nastiness business about an island of garbage, that was, appalling kinds of language, that has mobilized and actuated a fairly large number of Puerto Ricans in big cities. And the rally that was held the other day, where you had Jennifer Lopez and several very well-known entertainers, somebody or other, Bunny, I don't know him, but a lot of people seem to. They were very strongly supportive of Kamala Harris. So all of that is up for grabs too, and we won't know until we start seeing exit polls and surveys of people. Tell me how did you vote, why did you vote this way, and so forth.
And we hear talk from different analysts who are saying that the Democrats could potentially enjoy the support of more women, that like they did in 2020. Others are saying that the Republicans themselves may find a lot of favor with more African American voters. But you look at both the candidates, and I wonder what's your take on how both of them have done when it comes to trying to secure the hearts and the minds of the voters, and really, because a number of people are saying that it's a tight race, but is it as tight as it's being made out to be?
Well, it's as tight as it is, and we won't know how tight that was until Wednesday, perhaps. But as to the issue of the gender gap, it is absolutely true that the Democrats are enjoying an enormously large support among women as opposed to Republicans. Something like 2.5 to 1 nationally measured. Among Republicans, they have a significant but not overwhelming support among men, among male voters. But women vote more frequently than men, and in fact, there are simply more women than there are men in the United States, just like it's true in every country in the world. I don't know, maybe women are stronger. They live longer, they live better. The polling, the attitude surveys also tell you that there is an age differential. Older people are more likely to be voting Democratic than are young men, and perhaps young women as well. Young men have been a special focus of attention among the Trump camp because they think that those people feel, especially if they're white, young, and non-college educated, they think those people have a particular kind of grievance about the way they have been treated by society, such that they may well decide to take a chance with Donald Trump, who expresses their grievance in particularly strong and vivid terms. And so we're talking now gender, age, and what was the middle one there? Gender and age and division between educated at the university level and not educated at the university level. Among African American voters, historically, certainly since the 1930s, they have overwhelmingly supported the Democratic Party ever since the New Deal during the Great Depression, which is almost 100 years ago. And a lot of the survey data that I've seen indicates that although there was conversation that black men, young black men especially, were beginning to rethink their allegiance to the Democratic Party, I'm not absolutely convinced that's going to hold up once the actual votes are counted and taken. I think a lot of people are going to feel the pressure to pull back to their traditional, their historical connection to the Democratic Party, partly because of the way the rhetoric that has come from the Trump forces has been inimical toward minorities. It has basically sounded, I don't like to throw the word racist around, but it verges on that in many cases.
All right, let's see then, as you say, which way this one goes and in the next couple of days. But thank you so much for your time. That's Associate Editor at Daily Maverick and retired U.S. diplomat Brooks Spector.